And as I see, as you said, if you can keep building these events and keep getting enthusiasm, then something good's bound to happen. So
great, great. Hey, so it looks like
Right.
8 o'clock.
Yep.
Let's get going. I'm Lee Wright. I'm the founder of History Camp. I'm outside Boston, and with me in Virginia is.
Hi, I'm Carrie Lund, the director of the Pursuit of History, and we are excited tonight to have Jim Christ, the president of the Paoli Battlefield Preservation Fund, joining us. Thank you for being on with us tonight, Jim.
Thank you so much, Carrie and Lynn, for the invitation. And one thing I do want to thank is dominoeffect.net for helping me with putting up the special background here, which is at the site of the Paoli Battlefield.
Nice, that is fantastic. Okay, so just a little heads up. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We have not done this before with slides, but that's what we're going to do tonight. So Jim has some great maps and images for us that will help you understand the Battle of Paoli and the story that he's going to tell us. So with that, we'll have Jim go through that, and then we will come in at the end with questions and answers. Take it away, Jim.
Okay, thank you. I want to start off by where we are in the war so far to kind of give you a sense of where the war is at, the Revolutionary War at when this battle happens. As you know, the first shots are fired in April of 1775. We have the Battle of Bunker Hill. Washington assumes command July 3rd, 1775. And right away, he impresses. The British evacuate Boston, thanks to, of course, Henry Knox bringing the heavy siege guns in. That happens March 17, 1776. Independence is declared in July of 1776, and then things don't go so well for General Washington. First of all, he loses the battles for New York City. He loses New York. The British occupy it September 15, 1776. Fort Lee, New Jersey is captured on November 20th, and they push Washington all the way through New Jersey. He has to cross the Delaware River, and he's now in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, staring at a end of year deadline in 1776 when his enlistments are going to run out. He plans and is successful in the battles of Trenton and the battles of Princeton to help revigorate that patriot spirit. He also takes back part of New Jersey that was captured by the British, especially Trenton. They need that city. General Anthony Wayne, who is going to play a story in our battle in Paoli, is going to join Washington in the spring of 1777. He had been campaigning up in Canada and helped with the retreat of the American army in their ill-fated attempt to seize Canada. He's also commandant at that time of Fort Ticonderoga. So he's going to be sent down south to help George Washington. Then we move to the summer of 1777. There are two campaigns going on. British General John Burgoyne is going to start a Saratoga campaign that begins June of 1777. And then we also have the Philadelphia campaign, which this battle falls under. And that begins July 16th, 1777. And just to let you know, Lafayette arrives in Philadelphia at the end of July, and he is going to participate with General Washington in the Philadelphia campaign. So he will be with Washington. Now, the Battle of Paoli, it's a unique battle. And the one thing I want you to let you know, how many Revolutionary War battles do you know that are a nighttime bayonet raid? Probably not. This battle happened around midnight on September 20th, 1777. According to the Journal of the American Revolution, it's the 9th bloodiest battle of the war. It's called the Paoli Massacre by the Patriots. We can't find any evidence of Gray or any of his superiors ordering a massacre or saying, don't give these guys a quarter, but some atrocities we do know and are documented that were committed at Paoli. This is we have the second oldest war monument in the United States. It was dedicated September 20th, 1817. And we've all heard the cry of remember Pearl Harbor, remember the Alamo, or remember 9/11 more recently. Well, America's first battle cry, remember Paoli, is the first use of the remember phrase during this battle. It also influenced the Battle of Germantown, the next battle that happened 3 weeks later. The Pennsylvania line troops want revenge, and they pushed the British light infantry into the Chew Mansion. It is a big influence in how the Battle of Germantown turns out. And also, this is the last battle before the fall of Philadelphia, which is the capital city of the United States of America. So these are some of the highlights of the Battle of Paoli. Now, witness to a battle. We actually have a painting that was done. And this painting was done in 1782. So it's 5 years after the Battle of Paoli happened. Now, this is done by an Italian artist. And you're going to say, Jim, the Italians weren't in the Revolutionary War. Yes, true. But we do know the participant who participated in this battle helped direct Delgado and painting it based on his memory of the battle. Now you can see there's people being bayoneted, there's structures being lighted on fire. It's a very mass confused midnight raid that really tore the Americans apart. It really was a one-sided British victory. When you go back and look at this battle, seeing some of the atrocities there, you might think, oh, this is a patriot painter trying to get sympathy for the American cause. Actually, it's British Army Lieutenant Richard St. George. He was the primary subject of the American Museum of the Revolution in Philadelphia. They had an exhibit out last year called The Cost of the Revolution. And this person helped lead the assault on Paoli. And in 1782, he worked with Italian artist Elzevir Delgado to capture the drama and the violence on paper. So we do actually have a painting now to help tell the story of Paoli as well. Now you might ask now, let's get into Paoli. Where is the Paoli battlefield? Well, you'd probably say Paoli, Pennsylvania. That makes sense, right? The Paoli, Battle of Paoli and Paoli, Pennsylvania. Well, no, it's in Melvin, Pennsylvania. Your next question is going to be, Jim, why is it not called the Battle of Melvin? Well, Melvin was founded 113 years after the battle. It was then part of Willistown Township. There's not a lot out there. So why is it called the Battle of Paoli? Well, it's because of this structure right here. This is the Paoli Tavern. This picture was taken in 1886. It is destroyed at the turn of the century by fire. Coming into the 20th century, it is consumed by fire and burns down. Now, why was this tavern named the Paoli Tavern? Well, it's named after this gentleman, Filippo Antonio Pasquale de Paoli. He's a Corsican patriot. And as you can read President of the Executive Council, the General Diet of the People of Corsica. He designed and wrote the Constitution. The Corsican Republic was a representative democracy, asserting that the elected Diet of Corsican representatives had no master, meaning there's no king, there's no queen, there's no royals controlling everything. This is elected by representative. He holds his office by election, not by appointment. And they made him commander-in-chief of the armed forces as well as chief magistrate. Now you look at this and you think of our own Constitution in 1787, that these ideas might have been pressed on to Pasquale de Paoli. But the amazing thing is, he did this in November 1755. He wrote and the people ratified his Constitution. Now what happened to Paoli, France also claimed jurisdiction on Corsica, and he went to Britain to serve out his exile. And while in England, his stories were recorded by reporters, and they got over to newspapers that the Americans read. And the owner of this inn was so impressed with Pasquale Paoli that he named his tavern after him. And this is the first constitution written under the Enlightenment periods. So we kind of get the naming out of the way as to why it's Paoli. So we're going to talk about two campaigns here. As you see on the map at the bottom, that's going to describe Burgoyne's campaign. You actually have Burgoyne coming down south, capturing Fort Ticonderoga. His ultimate destination is Albany. You have Barry St. Ledger coming down from Montreal. He's going to cut in through the heartland. He's going to link up at Albany with Burgoyne. And then coming up from the south is supposed to be General Howe. But Howe is on a boat, and he leaves on, as I said, July 16th. He sends a message to Burgoyne saying, I'm off to capture Philadelphia. Good luck with your campaign. Clinton only has about 6,000 troops left in New York to help guard New York, and he is not going to travel to Albany with his force and leave New York undefended. And as we know, Barry St. Ledger turns back when he learns he actually wins a battle at a fort, and then when he finds out Benedict Arnold is coming with a release force, he leaves, and that's the end of him. Of course, Burgoyne is stopped at the twin battles of Saratoga, and as I said, Clinton stays home. Howe is going to sail down the coast, and of course, Washington has spies trying to find out where this fleet is going to land so he can position his troops to meet it. He actually is sighted off the coast of, or off the mouth of the Delaware Bay. Washington wants to move his troops to be close by. Then he pulls anchor and he goes back out to sea. He doesn't know where he's going. Washington thinks he could go back in New York and have this huge battle in New York, or he could go to Boston and take Boston again. So he's really not sure where Howe ends up. Howe actually is spotted. Then finally, as he gets into the Chesapeake Bay, Washington marches his troops towards through Philadelphia to meet the threat that the British are going to pose. The British are going to land right there. It's August 26th. Now, remember I said they left July 16th. That's a long time to do that voyage. And actually, his ships got scattered by a storm. He lands at Head of Elk. A lot of his horses are emaciated. He has to get new horses. He has to get new supplies. But then the battles start happening. The first battle is the Battle of Couch's Bridge. You probably never heard of it. It happened in Delaware. This is the only battle that happened on Delaware soil. It's a match between the Hessians, who are coming up from the north, with the British Army behind them, and they're attacked by Maxwell's light infantry. They exchange a lot of fire. It's almost a 7-hour firefight. At the end, it's done with bayonets and swords, but the British get the upper hand. The Americans move out. It is a small, as far as you look at the casualties, the Americans maybe less than 50 killed, wounded, or captured. The British probably maybe 5 or 10. So it's, again, a very one-sided battle. That happens September 3rd. About a week later is our big battle, the Battle of Brandywine. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Brandywine. Washington on one side of the Brandywine Creek, Howe on the other. Howe does an end around, goes around the top of Washington's guarded fords and attacks Washington. Anthony Wayne is right at the crossing at Chad's Ford. He has to battle with the Hessian commander Kniphausen as he attacks over the ford and goes after Anthony Wayne's men. Both Wayne and especially Anthony Greene hold back the British drive enough for Washington to retire in good order. Washington's troops go to Chester, Pennsylvania, and then they go up towards Philadelphia for safety, up where the Battle of Germantown is going to be fought. Washington then says, you know what, I got another way to stop General Howe. I should have another engagement with him before he crosses the Schuylkill and threatens Philadelphia. And on September 16th, they meet in what's called the Great Valley. It's very close to where the Battle of Paoli is fought. And we have what's called the Battle of the Clouds. There's firefights on either side of their lines. Washington and Howe have their lines out. It's going to be another Brandywine. But before any serious fighting gets started, the clouds open up. It's a very bad nor'easter, according to Tom McGuire. Not quite a hurricane, but it deluges the area with rain and with heavy wind. Washington has to retreat. His troops have their gunpowder soaked. The Hessians and the British tried to do a bayonet charge, and their boots are sticking in the mud and sucking their feet out of them. So the battle is ended. Washington marches his forces up North Valley Hill all the way to Yellow Springs Hospital. Yellow Springs at that point was a depot and also a hospital, especially during the Valley Forge campaign. And there, what he's going to do, he's going to split his forces. He needs to keep Howe from crossing the Schuylkill, and he also needs to get supplies. So how is he going to do this? He's going to have Anthony Wayne stay behind. He's going to give him 4 cannon and about 2,100 men. These are all Pennsylvania line troops who have fought with Wayne, so they're very familiar with him. He's going to stay, and he's going to tell him to attack the army from the rear as it is in motion, meaning as they're marching towards the ford, go after them. Don't do it while they're in camp because they're too compact and spread out to get any kind of effect. Wayne's very confident of his position. He's bragging to Washington, the British have no idea what that I'm here. Well, the problem is loyalist spies and patrols are giving alarm to Howe. They have found Wayne and they're sending reports back about Wayne. Now, Wayne is moving his camp around. Wayne's very familiar with this area. He lives probably about 4 miles from the Paoli Battlefield. He lives about maybe 2 or 3 miles from the Paoli Tavern. So he knows this area very well. Now, the big Christmas present that Howe gets is a message is intercepted. And it's a reply message from Washington to Wayne laying out his whole plans for the battle. And a deserter walks in and hands this to General Howe. So now Howe knows what's going on. And he's going to tap General Gray with an attack plan. Now, I'm going to read you that message, and you can use the map to kind of follow along. Now, remember, this is General Washington replying to Anthony Wayne. And he says, by advice of my general officers, I have determined that the army under my immediate command cross the Schuylkill River at Parker's Ford and endeavor to get down in time to oppose the enemy in the front. Whilst your corps, under your command and in conjunction with General Smallwood and Colonel Gist of the Maryland Militia, act to the greatest advantage in the rear. So Washington wants to get behind the British and have Wayne and Smallwood attack from the opposite side, getting them in a pincer movement, and he hopes that's the end of the war. Now, the result right now, as you see on this map, is Wayne is now in a dangerously exposed position because Washington's moving away from him. Virtually unsupported and within less than 3 miles of a professional force 7 times larger than his own. The interception of this dispatch deprived Wayne of the knowledge that the main army was actually moving away from him and over the Schuylkill. For the British, it laid Washington's plans before them and confirmed Wayne's presence somewhere behind the army. So who's leading the British? As I said, he tapped Charles Grey, Charles No Flint Grey. This is a picture from him in India when he campaigned there, a slightly older picture. He is the last American, or he's the last British commander of the American forces in America in 1783 when the official peace happened. So he's in charge of the British Army at that time. He is called No Flint Grey because of this battle. He has his soldiers remove the flint from the rifles. The reason he does this is surprise. He doesn't want anybody to accidentally fire their weapon and have their position exposed. Again, surprise bayonet raid is what Grey is going after. However, there has to be a however in everything. There is a Jonathan Maitland, who is a major in the 2nd Light Infantry. He tells Charles Grey, my squad wants to leave their weapons loaded because we might have to do some firing. Grey says, if your muskets go off accidentally and give up our position, you will be severely punished. He tells Grey he's willing to take the circumstance. Now, as I said, General Grey, this has been called the Paoli Massacre. Well, there's another massacre that happens about a year later, the Baylor Massacre or Tappan Massacre. It happened with a Commander George Baylor, who was in charge of the 3rd Regiment of Continental Dragoons. This happened in Riverdale, New Jersey. At least 69 dragoons were killed, injured, or taken prisoner. 11 were killed outright. 4 were left to die from their wounds, and 6 were thrown into tanning vats. And the vats were in Herring's Tannery, which was used on the site. The remains were identified by artifacts as buttons and clothing regiments. Now, we're all about historic preservation, and I do want to give a shout out to the county because they preserved the site and set up historical placards there that you can read about what happened here. The stone in the center, really the last sentence is all you need to read. A number of Americans were killed and wounded after they surrendered. So remember that when we're talking about this battle and we're talking about Paoli. Now, General Charles Grey, as you know, is leading the British forces. What forces are with him? Well, he has a 2nd Light Infantry Battalion. Remember the 49th of Foot. We're going to have a story about them a little bit later. The 44th Regiment of Foot, the Royal Highlanders, the 42nd Regiment. In his new book coming out this fall, Michael Harris, to his follow-up book on Brandywine, talks about the Battle of Clouds, the Battle of Paoli, and the Battle of Germantown. And he will talk about the Royal Highland Regiment at Paoli being sort of revenge. They fought Wayne's forces earlier in New York, and Wayne's forces got the better of them. They're here for revenge, and boy, they're going to get it. The 16th Dragoons are also there, plus the Queen's Own Light Dragoons. Colonel Musgrave is there. He has the 40th and 55th. I call him a blocking force, and I'll explain this later. So there's about a little less than 2,000 troops involved in this. Over 500 of them are not going to participate in the battle. The rest of them are going to go with Grey. I call it the hammer and the anvil approach, and I'll explain what I mean. The British objective, if you look at the bayonet, that's their first one. Surprise. The Americans are very deathly afraid. This is before Valley Forge, before they get the training from von Steuben. So this is a terror weapon that they're going to do at night. And can you imagine somebody running at you at night with one of those? It's really, you want to run and get the heck out of there. They're going to station Musgrave's forces by the Paoli Tavern as a blocking force. I call that the Anvil. A small detachment of the Anvil is going to go to Waynesboro to look for Anthony Wayne. Actually, Paoli, his wife, is home, and she writes in her journal that the British officers were very polite, barely touched the thing, looking for the general. He wasn't here, and they left. Gray's forces are going to attack from the west and push Wayne's forces to the east. That's the hammer. Wayne's caught between two British forces with no possibility of escape. If you look at the map, on the top side of the map, Gray is going to come down Sweetsford Road, and as you can see, he's going to loop around and get the Wayne from the west. He's going to push them east to the Paoli Tavern, and Colonel Musgrave's there with his blocking force. So Wayne's army, they want to take the whole army out of action. So this is the plan of the British when they leave that night of September 20th to go capture Anthony Wayne. And of course, General Anthony Wayne, we know, hometown boy, this is home turf. He is the American commander. Who does he have with him? Well, he has the 1st Pennsylvania Brigade under Colonel Thomas Hartley of York, Pennsylvania. He also has the 2nd Pennsylvania Brigade under Richard Humpton. Richard Humpton's from Yorkshire, England. He made a name for himself by helping Washington get the boats at Washington Crossing when he needed. So he is held in very high esteem. He is going to be incensed with Anthony Wayne after this battle, and we'll explain that a little bit later, but keep that in your mind. He has 4 cannon and 37 personnel. He has about 60 dragoons. Also, he has 25 supply and quartermaster wagons. So remember that too. He's also waiting on about 2,100 raw Maryland militia. These are green recruits. These are militia, not Continental troops. Some of them lack weapons. Some of them lack shoes. They're chronically late in getting to the battle. They were supposed to be at the Battle of the Clouds. Their supplies train is really getting behind them, and that's what Washington, in his official report, says why the Maryland militia didn't get there quicker. It's their supplies aren't getting to them fast enough. American objective, Wayne is waiting for, of course, the Maryland militia to reinforce his men, attack the British camp when they're in motion, not at their camp, meaning as they're going towards the Schuylkill Ford. Have Wayne attack from the south and slow the British advance. What Wayne wants is attack the British army by having Washington join the attack from the front with him and with Smallwood. They're going to push them against the swollen Schuylkill River, and that will prevent the crossing. Washington orders, in his orders, he says he wants to get behind the British and have Wayne and Smallwood's forces attack from the south. And of course, this is unknown to Wayne. So they're both, you can see both armies are trying a pincer movement. They want to have 2 armies between the enemy force. That's what they want. And as you know, in battles, things do unravel. This is Wayne's plan in his head. He wants Washington to come down and join him and Smallwood, push against the British camp in Tadifron, and pin them against the Schuylkill River, which at this point is still swollen from the Battle of the Clouds. Now, were there warnings to Wayne? Yes, there are warnings to Wayne. Colonel John Bartholomew, a local militia officer, gives a warning of an impending attack around 6 o'clock that evening. Old Man Jones, he's an elderly citizen. He heard it from at the Paoli Tavern from a servant. But both the servant and Jones are known to Wayne, and they overheard it from British soldiers. This is sometime between 8 and 10 o'clock. Now, the important thing to know about this, Colonel Humpton's not here when these warnings are given to Wayne, and he's in the complete dark about this until after the battle when someone says, hey, you know, Wayne got warned about this. That's when he becomes incensed at Anthony Wayne. Now, Anthony Wayne has been criticized about not doing anything with these warnings. He actually did. He set up 2 additional picket posts, and he also sent out mounted patrol, these horse patrols, to try to find the British after coming at him. Now, at one of the picket posts, during the attack, I'm going to skip ahead to the attack a little bit. My hero of the Battle of Paoli is Lieutenant Samuel Brady. He was of Doyle's independent company. He's on guard duty at picket post 3. He lays down his blanket, and he has it buckled around him. The British struck. He bolted up, and he was bayoneted. The bayonet goes through his blanket and pins him to the fence post. So he takes the blanket off, tore the blanket off, and he ran away. A horseman overtook him and ordered him to stop. He turns around and shoots the horseman, and then he runs into a small swamp and hides. And he's there during the whole battle, keeping his head down, trying to be, of course, inconspicuous, so no one will the British won't come down and get him. The battle rages on. He hears the shouts, the groans, the firing, the steel being done by the bayonets and the swords. Finally, around 4 o'clock, when everything is done, and around 5 or 6 o'clock, when the sun comes up, he finds 55 other men in the same swamp with him doing the same thing he is, hiding from the British. He leads those men back up to General Anthony Wayne after the battle. So in my mind, he's one of the heroes of the Battle of Paoli for having done this. Now, this is the actual map of actually what happened during the attack of Paoli. You'll see at the top, you'll see the Paoli Tavern in Waynesboro. On the other side, those red arrows going down, that's the march of General Gray. The first shots of the battle are fired around Moorhill Road and Swedes Ford Road. That's the road to the Swedes Ford of the Schuylkill River. The American patrols fire. Wayne is alerted that the British are coming. They're firing all the way down till they get to the Warren Tavern. At the Warren Tavern, they stop. They drop off any prisoners. Anybody who'd been out that night or in a house along the road is taken by the British and forced to march in their lines to the Warren Tavern. And we do know of one civilian casualty of the battle who died afterwards of pneumonia, because it is drizzling that night. They pulled him out of his house just wearing his overcoat. That was it. He caught pneumonia and died. As you can see, picket post number 4 is right by the Warren Tavern. Those people flee in terror. The 4th picket, actually, he doesn't know which way to go at this point. The British are at the Warren Tavern. They asked the owner of the Warren Tavern if they know where Wayne's camp is. He said, no, but the blacksmith down the road has been to Wayne's camp. They go down and grab this blacksmith. They take him back to the 3rd floor of the Warren Tavern, and they coerce him to lead them to Wayne's camp. And we don't know if they smacked him around, if they threatened him, but he decides he has to lead the British. He's forced to lead them to Wayne's camp. And if you can look where picket post 6 is, if they would have taken that turn in the road, he would have been on the west side of Wayne's camp. And when he would have pushed east, that goes right in line to the Paoli Tavern. The only thing, and I repeat, the only thing that went right for General Anthony Wayne that night is the route the British actually took. The guides took them. There were 2 picket posts they had to take out, picket post 4, picket post 3. They rush into Anthony Wayne's camp, and the mayhem starts. Now, Wayne again has 4 cannon, 25 wagons, and about 2,000 troops. And he has 2,000 more Maryland militia coming down the road. So what does he do? He wants to get his assets out of the way first. So his 4 cannon, he orders to leave the field. His 25 supply wagons will follow. Then his troops will file out behind that. The problem is there's narrow fence lines. He took down just enough of the fence because remember, this is a farmer's field, a patriot farmers, that he doesn't want to ruin their fence and tear them up and use them for firewood like the British are. He just wants to take sections out so he can move his wagons and his cannons in and out. As they're passing through the 3 fence posts to get out to Sugartown Road at the bottom of his camp, one of the last cannon breaks down from all the jarring it took. And instead of pushing the cannon out of the way and having everyone keep going, the people are actually trying to put the cannon back together. Meanwhile, that causes a backup. The wagons are stopped. The troops are all stopped. The troops are actually facing towards the west when the attack happens. Wayne actually goes into the woods, these east woods around picket post number 3 with the 1st Pennsylvania militia, or sorry, the 1st Pennsylvania regiment. And this regiment is equipped with a long rifle. The problem that you have with a long rifle, A, it can't carry a bayonet, and number 2, it takes longer to load than a musket. And when you have somebody running at you full blast with a bayonet, you're not really going to get off too many shots before they end up stabbing you. So they might have got maybe 1 shot off, and they run into camp, and then the whole camp is involved now in the battle. The 2nd Light Infantry, of course, is the first in. The Queen's Own Light Dragoons and the 44th Regiment of Foot are the 2nd wave that come in. The Royal Highlander Watch then come in. These 600 troops come in, and they do a great job of burning down the camp, of stabbing people multiple times. They are just hell-bent on getting revenge back on Wayne's camp. Wayne, as I said, has these structures built that look like wigwams. He calls them booths or wigwams. Some of the soldiers run in there. That's where their arms and ammunition are because it is raining. They run in there to hide. The British hold them in front by the bayonets, and then they burn the structure down. And the British commanders are saying, it's unfortunate that these poor wretched souls have to die and be consumed by the flame instead of facing us, the British bayonet. The British form a horseshoe alignment around the American forces, attempting to encircle it. The 4th PA is ordered to cover the retreat. Then the 10th PA is ordered to cover the retreat. And finally, Wayne's troops get out of the trap in the camp. They're not surrounded. Well, as they're making their way down King Road, they run into who else? The Maryland militia, arriving right on time. They hear the attack about 1 mile from camp. Colonel Chambers, who is leading them, is actually one of the leaders in Wayne's camp. He was injured at Brandywine. He's doing this horse duty, and he tells General Smallwood, I can lead you no further. I have to go back to my men. He runs off to the Paoli Battlefield, and General Smallwood decides, you know what, I can't stay here. I'm going to go back to the high position about a mile away, and that way I can keep an eye to see who's coming down the road. Well, Major Maitland, remember the guy with the loaded weapons? He is going to lay an ambush for those Maryland militia, and they attack. They shoot on both sides of the road. And as General Small would say, they throw his army or his men into a consternation and confusion. They're cutting the reins from the horses carrying any wagons and hopping on the horses and leaving. They're leaving by the droves. Of the 2,100 men who came here, less than 1,000 remain after the battle. And then to add insult to injury, he goes ahead with a few horsemen to scout the road ahead, and on the way back, his own militia fire on him. They're that scared and they're that frightened about what happened that night. A horseman next to the general actually dies. He is not affected by it, the general, but he does lead his troops back to the tavern in safety. Now, what happens at the Paoli Battlefield? You can see some of the wounded here. Captain Irvine, 17 stab wounds in all. Fife Major Richard Stack, 13 wounds. Private John Sneed, 14 wounds. So you're seeing these guys aren't stabbed once or twice. They're being stabbed multiple times. The drum major, Daniel St. Clair of Hartley's Additional Regiment, it says severely mutilated. He actually held his hand up to block a saber blow from a horseman. It took off his fingers and poked his eye out. That's why he's listed as severely mutilated. And then we found a record of the Virginian who had another atrocity committed against him, 46 distinct bayonet wounds. He was encircled by British. They all took turns poking him. He's left for dead. A Quaker finds him, takes him to a hospital, and this Chester County militiaman is there at the hospital and documents what happened to this gentleman. Now, after the battle, the main concentration of bodies are between the fence lines of the property owners, Ezekiel Bowen and Cromwell Pierce. So they do a burial mound and bury the 52 that they have found. The burial mound is right behind me if you look. One is later found on the battlefield somewhere. We don't know where he is, but they buried him somewhere on the battlefield a week later. So there is a 53rd somewhere. Now, is this a massacre? You've heard all the numbers and what's going on. Captain John Andre, before he was major, he's a captain at the time during the battle happened. He said, it can't be a massacre. We took 71 prisoners. Well, what happened is 32, or over half of them, are left for dead at the houses along the way back because they're too badly wounded to make it back to that short distance back to camp. Now, after this, the Pennsylvania line wants revenge. They want revenge on the British. And the British light infantry, the 2nd Light Infantry, they have white feathers in their cap. They're going to dye them red, and they're going to put them in their caps, and they're going to say, when you see the guys with red feathers, that's us. We're the 2nd Light Infantry. We did this to you. And the Pennsylvania line turns around and calls them the Bloodhounds, and that name sticks with them. The image on the corner is a Remember Paoli salute that the Continental troops do during our Heritage Day to honor the men that died that night. Now, another, remember I told you about the 49th of Foot that happened in the attack? They, to this day, wear a red badge or a red flash on their uniform. It's actually called the Brandywine Flash. It should actually called the Paoli Flash. And if you read in the comment in blue, it was awarded to the regiment for their actions of the light company of the 49th of Foot who took part in a night attack at a location called Paoli. Well, Malvern, but Paoli at then. So this is another lasting image that we have of the battle. The Battle of Germantown is the other one. Revenge Wayne's Affair and Remember Paoli is shouted for the first time. The American troops push, the Pennsylvania troops especially, push those red-feathered light infantry, 2nd Light Infantry into the Chu Mansion, and they're scared to death to come out because they know that the Americans want revenge. The Americans try to rush the house. They try cannon fire in the house. There is a separation in the line. General Gray comes up and rescues General Musgrave and the rest of the 2nd Light Infantry in the mansion. Court of Inquiry, as you know, our buddy Humpton hears about that we were warned about this and Wayne did nothing. So he's incensed. He actually testifies and he's openly hostile to Wayne during his Court of Inquiry. Now the papers are lost, but we do know that it didn't vindicate Wayne's conduct to his satisfaction. So if that doesn't happen, what do? You go to move to a court-martial. And on November 1st of 1777, the verdict was announced. And not surprisingly, he was not guilty of the charge exhibited against him. The court do acquit him with highest honor. So he has an honors restored. 2 years later, Washington comes calling because he wants to put together a permanent light infantry force. He chooses Anthony Wayne. Anthony Wayne makes a deal with Washington. I want to lead the force. I'm going to pick the men who are going to be in my force and I'm going to train them. Washington agrees. Their first mission is to attack a fort called Stony Point. It's called the Gibraltar of the Hudson. It's a planned midnight bayonet-only surprise attack. And the password is remember Paoli, if that didn't give it away. July 16th, the attack happens, 1779. So reminiscent of Paoli, complete victory, capture the fort, hundreds of prisoners, but no atrocities. Wayne does not want revenge. He declares no atrocity. Continental Congress does award him a gold medal for his battle of Stony Point, and there's also a fresco in the United States Capitol of the Battle of Stony Point. Now, what happened back at Paoli, to try to wrap this up, in 1817, these War of 1812 vets have come back home, and they're seeing the farmer's plow getting closer and closer and closer to this burial mound. They decide they need to preserve it and remember the veterans. They build a wall around it, and they hire William Strickland as an architect to go get a monument that would be fitting to put there. And he chooses a monument. Actually, it's Wayne's second burial. I'll explain that later down the road, but at St. David's Church, his second monument is there. It's an obelisk, and that's what they chose for this. Now, years later, what happens is monument and relic hunters go chip away at this monument. The base is actually stolen. And in 1877, to celebrate the 100th year of this battle, they now erect another monument. You can see the etching on the bottom, around the bottom. That is originally on the original monument. You can barely read it because it's so faded, but it's there now that you can read it and see it when you come to the park today. So to wrap this all up, remember Paoli is our legacy and the origin point of the remember phrase. It was used to rally the troops since the Revolutionary War, but can also be used to remind us of our humanity and better angels, and how we should conduct ourselves on the battlefield and beyond. So that is my presentation. I want to thank Lee and Carrie for letting me talk to you about this battle. That is very close to me, and we can start taking questions now. Carrie, I think you need to unmute.
There we go.
There we go.
How about that? Yep. Jim, thank you very much.
Sure.
You know, one of the things we talked about before we got started was the role that you and others have played in actually preserving this and helping educate people about it. I've been a member of various organizations, and I know how critical it is, people like you, to play a leadership role and also just roll up your sleeves and get things done. Do you want to talk just a little bit about the organization behind this, some of the activities you put on, and you know, any insights from those? I'm sure there are many people that are watching that are members of their own local historical societies or history organizations.
Yeah, the monument and the gravesite has been here, and as it said, that other monument has been here since 1817, the other monument in 1877. This was owned by a prep school, Melvin Prep, and they were actually talking about building on the land behind the monument, housing development. As we all know, that's the big trend. You know, Battle of Brandywine and some other sites are threatened. We actually were one of the successes. We talked to Malvern Prep, their teacher that teaches there, Tom McGuire, who wrote the book, The Battle of Paoli. So if you see this book, Tom McGuire, he's the best man to know about Paoli than probably anybody on the planet. He researched it, wrote the book, and got behind the effort to try to save the battlefield. And we did that in 1999. Actually, it was Halloween 1999 was the deadline we were given by the prep school to raise money to buy the land. And we were about halfway short. They wanted about 2.4 million, and we raised about $1.5 million. We reached out to our congressman at that time, Kurt Weldon, and some others, and they passed what we called at that time the first Patriot Acts. Of course, this is before 2001. And we got money to help save the battlefield. Brandywine got money to help purchase easements as well for that battlefield. So it was a big win for us. We were then charged with educating and promoting the battlefield and educating the public about what happened here. We have several events all throughout the years. You know, COVID's been just a real stick in the mud for us about what's happened, but we do have a lecture series we did at the Warren Tavern. We also had another one at the Black Powder Tavern over at Valley Forge. We have 2 paranormal tours that we do. Our next one is coming up, and we are going to have it October 10th. We do get about a crowd of somewhere times between 50 and 60 people coming out here and investigating about what happened. We also have another component, Wreaths Across America. We did this about 4 years ago or 3 years ago. We're going to go for our fourth annual Wreaths Across America event this December. Actually, if you see along the gravesite, you'll see some of the wreaths there and the American flag in the background. We do honor our American veterans and hold them sacred. So that is the purpose and the founding of the Paoli Battlefield Preservation Fund.
All right, well, thank you so much. This has been very interesting. We've learned a lot of details that I didn't know about this battle, so thank you very much for that. Sure. We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and next week we will have Dan Gifford with us. He's got a new book about the Gilded Age whale ship that was actually a whaling ship turned into a museum, and sort of that change of the guard as things were moving into the progressive era. So join us for that one next week, and everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.